Stripes are probably the easiest way to add color to your projects, especially if you're new to working with color. Hi, I'm your co-host Eunny Jang, and on today's Knitting Daily, we'll learn the secrets to successful striping. I'll get started with a quick lesson on how to knit jogless stripes in the round. Then, Kathy Elkins is back with Kim to demonstrate the Nantucket felted rug. She shares her tips for knitting simple stripes, from changing colors for each new row to weaving in tails as you go. Next, in our how-to lesson, Laura Bryant partners with Barry Klein to show Shea techniques for creating stripes using the Fibonacci sequence of numbers. They also have their tips for stripes while working garter and stockinette stitches. Finally, Kathy, Merrick, and Kim demonstrate the swirling bag design, which is crocheted in striped panels and sewn together at the end for interesting shaping. So first, let's start with some simple jogless stripes. So this is a really handy knitting trick to know. One place where you might use stripes in the round is in knitting socks, for example. And I've got just a couple of samples here that represent the beginning of a toe-up sock. If you can imagine that this is the toe, and then it would work up from there. So stripes are such a fun way to decorate your socks. You can do all kinds of fun things with them, from using different self-striping yarns together to using two different solids or as many solids as you want. But there is just one problem, and that is what's known as a jog. You can see here that these are my end of round areas. And you can see here that the end of the stripe doesn't match up with the beginning of the stripe. And the reason for that is because knitting in the round isn't really knitting rounds of knitting that are stacked up on top of each other. It's really working in an endless spiral. So while this is the beginning of the round here, while this stitch may be the beginning of the round and this stitch may be the end of the round is always one higher because you're working in a spiral around and around and around. So you're always going to have a problem whenever you're working stripes in the round where they don't quite meet up at the edges. Now, with one row stripes, this is very obvious. With larger stripes, it can be less of an issue, and it may not even bother you that much to have this kind of thing. This will block out somewhat. But if you want to have really perfect stripes that meet perfectly together at the ends of rounds and have an almost seamless look to them, there are a couple different really cool techniques that you can use. So I'll show you the first one here. If you want to work stripes of more than one, stripes where each color, or each stripe is more than one row high, this is probably your best option. So you've got here, this is what's known as a slip stitch jogless join. So you can see here that here's my end of the round, and there's just barely a noticeable jog, and this will almost completely block out to the point where it's almost unnoticeable. Now if you look even more closely, you can see that while my stripes are really 3 rows high, you've got 1, 2, 3 stitches in any given stripe, 1, 2, 3 stitches. Right here, the first stitch of my round, the first stitch after the end of the round, there are only 2 stitches, 1 and 2. And this bottom stitch is really pulled up quite a lot. What happened there is that we just slipped that stitch. It pulls up, and what it does is pull up all the stitches in that column along with it, which evens things out a little bit. So I'll just show you how you would work a color change round here. So I finished my green stripe, and I'm getting ready to work my pink stripe again. So I'll pick up my pink yarn. And whenever you're working with stripes, it's always just a good idea to just let your yarns dangle and then just pick up the new color always from underneath, and then you'll get just a really easy spiraling neat join inside. So you're going to knit the first round just as usual. So I'm just going to quickly knit all the way around. Of course, all the same tips that you use whenever you're knitting in the round apply here. You always want to make sure to pull your yarns tight at the joins to make sure that you don't have ladders between where the double pointed needles work. And I'm always working on double pointed needles for socks just because I find that more comfortable, but there are lots of different options, from working with magic loop or different circular styles that you can always find, and this technique will always work with any of them. So my color change round, I'm just knitting as normal all the way around here. I'm just going to knit to the end. And then what you're going to do is, I've reached my last stitch of the row, and all I'm going to do is I've reached my first stitch again. You're just going to slip that first stitch knitwise, or purlwise, excuse me. So you're just going to insert your needle as if to purl, and then just continue knitting. without ever pulling a new stitch through that yarn. So you can see here already that while there are 2 stitches here, there's only 1 here. And this stitch is pulling up that entire column of stitches and evening out the joins. So this is a good technique for when you want stitches that are a little bit thicker. What it does do is shorten the fabric along that line, of course, because there are just fewer stitches, so there may be a little bit of pulling. One other really cool technique that you can use is just called barber pole knitting. And this is really simple. It's kind of different here. You don't have a join because there is no place where a stripe meets itself, if that makes sense. Think of the stripes as though they're stacked up, as though they're the colors stacked up on an old-fashioned barber pole. They're just kind of chasing each other around. They never meet. So you can see here that the pink stripe starts here and then continues and just keeps going up and up and up all the way around the fabric. So the way to do this is, as you can see here, to just start each color on a separate needle, blue, purple, green, pink, and green. To just start each color on a separate needle, and then to, as you're working, just work to the end of a given needle with the right color, drop it, and then just pick up the next color that's hanging there. And you can see what one of the problems of this method is, that your yarns do tend to get tangled really quickly, so you need to stop and untangle frequently. So just pick up the next color and just keep working. Now, for this method, you can only have stripes that are 1 row high, but it's a little bit of a cool knitted trick to have up your sleeve. And we'll be right back.
Knitting Daily. Make time for yarn every day. Visit our website for free access to all the patterns, project ideas, tips, and techniques from this season of Knitting Daily. Log on and get printer-friendly patterns and more at knittingdailytv.com. This is show 311.